The elites in this country are waging war against us, waging war against our values, waging war against our prosperity, waging war against our natural rights as parents, as citizens, as individuals. I've been listening to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle decrying the alleged lack of action by those on my side of the aisle with respect to gun violence and with respect to guns generally. And I think it is important to note the primary driver of the current malaise and the current dangers upon citizens by those with guns comes from criminals and those who have mental health problems. A full 1/3 of Americans are currently putting themselves out as depressed, according to polls. We have mental health issues with our children, drug issues. We have problems with people who feel socially detached. I can assure you that when I was a child, about the time I was born, fully half of American households had weapons, had guns. Fewer than 1/3 do today. The fact is, we have a problem and an epidemic of people with mental health issues, and we have a lack of resolve of leadership in this country to deal with those or to deal with the criminals perpetrating crimes. That's the truth. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle rush to say that they want to get the guns. But the fact is, we need to stop the criminals. I was a federal prosecutor. Spent my time in the United States Attorney's Office targeting criminals with guns, putting bad guys behind bars. There has been a movement of late to allow these criminals back out on our streets. That is a mistake. There has been a long-standing movement to not treat those with mental health problems. And it's getting infinitely worse with these devices, iPhones, all of the focus that our young are directing towards electronic devices rather than engaging with their fellow mankind. We know it, we see it, and we do nothing about it. We rage against TikTok because of its relationship to China. Why don't we rage against the extent to which these are addictive devices, putting garbage in the minds of our children, creating environment where children get detached from reality, detached from society, and you see it unfold before our very eyes, and the response among leaders of this country is to form a task force. You don't need a task force to understand that our society is breaking. You don't need a task force to understand that our communities are breaking down. But the American people are feeling on a daily basis, when I talk to my constituents, the people I run into, the people I run into on airplanes, Americans I don't represent, Americans I do represent, they know that something is very, very wrong with our country. That is the truth. That is what the American people know. Not just with politicians, not just with elected leaders, not just with Congress, not just with the economy, but that something is just fundamentally wrong, fundamentally broken with our way of life. And they're not wrong. Just a couple of weeks ago, we celebrated Independence Day. And one line from that document, which was written specifically about and to King George, signing the death warrants for all those who signed it, he said, Jefferson wrote, they said, he, the king, has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us, end quote. How different is that from our current situation? The elites in this country are waging war against us, waging war against our values, waging war against our prosperity, waging war against our natural rights as parents, as citizens, as individuals. The average American right out there today listening just want to play by the rules. They want to go to school. They want to get a job. They want to buy a house. They want to support their family. They want to raise their kids. They want to raise their kids to be happy. They want their kids to be free. They want a society, more importantly, they want a family that is flourishing and happy and can achieve. All of that is what we historically called the American dream. But what is the state of the American dream today? And if I asked that question, half the people in a room would be staring at their daggum iPhones, because we don't engage with people anymore. If I said this in the middle of a meeting of my colleagues, if I said it in some room, I go to a restaurant, how many times do you see everybody just staring at these things? The question here is, what happened to the American dream? My colleagues, if they were in this room, of course they're not, I would ask, do you believe that the American dream can be achieved by your children, by your grandchildren today? Do you believe it? Do you believe it is attainable? Do you believe that if you play by the rules, that they will achieve the dream? Or do you think that the rich and the powerful, the large corporations, the government, your own leaders, are rigging the system to protect their own status, to protect their own wealth against your freedom and your prosperity? We have a system where too often today, crony policies help big, woke corporations make windfall profits while families struggle with inflation and small businesses struggle to stay afloat amid a mountain of regulatory burdens and costs. That's the truth. Everybody I talk to can't afford labor. They can't afford their supplies. They can't afford a car. They can't buy a new vehicle because it's been regulated to death. They can barely afford their electricity bills. That's the truth of everyday Americans right now, and they're wondering why. What happened to that American dream? The elites, on the other hand, bailed out Wall Street. They forced Main Street to pay for it. Now they're doing it again. Wall Street got $1 trillion bailout after a heavy hand in tanking the economy. And they're making more money than ever now. This year, the federal government gave a $22 billion bailout to Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank in New York. The administration only cares about their own. Treasury Secretary Yellen said smaller regional banks wouldn't get the same treatment. What exactly does too big to fail mean? Too big to fail means I'm going to protect the fat cats down the street, but you at home are left holding the bag. Since 2008, corporate profits have increased by 250% in the last 15 years. Hourly wages have increased less than 50%. You say, oh, Chip, you sound like a Democrat. What I'm trying to say is we have a situation where, as the founders predicted, the power structure in this town is too tilted to the power structure on Wall Street, too tilted to the power structure in corporate boardrooms across this country, and hardworking Americans are the ones who can't make it. And we should be here fighting for them. But are we?